All right, everyone. Our topic for today is going to be the election of 1800. And so the election of 1800 is really kind of an interesting topic for a lot of different reasons. So today's screencast is going to focus just on the election of 1800. So it's going to be a pretty short screencast, but we're going to go kind of a little bit in depth into this election because it gives you some insight into the Electoral College, how it works, what happens when there's a tie. You know, a lot of the questions that you guys were asking me in class, it comes up very quickly. So by the third election in American history, you're going to really have some controversy kind of swirling around the Electoral College, and they're going to understand that they need to make some changes to this system. So what you're looking at here are the first two, or the big two candidates of the election of 1800. So you have Thomas Jefferson versus John Adams. So it's kind of a repeat of the election of 1796. So to give you guys some background again about Jefferson and about Adams, Jefferson is going to be your Democratic Republican candidate. Remember, the Democratic Republicans are strict constructionists as far as their interpretation of the Constitution, and their power base is going to be in the South and the Western states, and increasingly a little bit more into the Middle Atlantic states as well. John Adams is going to be your Federalist, and they have the loose constructionist interpretation of the Constitution. And their power base at this point is primarily New England, and increasingly it's going to be more and more New England. So what you see here with the political parties is they start to become more and more regional political parties, relegated to specific regions of America. Now these are the two principal candidates, but remember, in these early elections, the people who the Democratic Republicans really want to be vice president and who the Federalists want to be vice president are kind of just like thrown into the general election. They don't run alongside Jefferson or run alongside Adams. They're just kind of like thrown up there. So each political party also puts up two other candidates. So the Democratic Republicans put up Aaron Burr, and the Federalists put up Charles Pinckney. Now, what you have to understand here is that neither political party has any intention of either Aaron Burr or Charles Pinckney being the president. They nominate them specifically really to be the vice president along with Jefferson or along with Adams. But herein lies one of the major problems kind of in early American history with these elections. So what ends up happening here is if you look at the electoral votes for the candidates here, the green is showing you Thomas Jefferson, and the yellow is showing you Aaron Burr. So by all accounts here, if the election was done today in America the way that the Electoral College works today, Jefferson would have won the presidency outright because Aaron Burr would have been his running mate. But if you look at it here, that's not how it works. The electors at the time, a part of the Electoral College, had to place two votes. So basically every state that Jefferson won, they voted one time for Jefferson and they voted one time for Aaron Burr. So what ends up happening here is you have a tie in the Electoral College. So as if Jefferson and Aaron Burr were running against each other, even though basically everybody knew that they were not running against each other. It was really Jefferson versus Adams. So what happens in this case when you have a tie? Even a tie like this, which really, by all accounts, is not really a tie like if you had it today. So you have 73 for Jefferson, 73 for Aaron Burr. What happens is that it's going to go, we'll come back to this actually, we'll come back to the map. What's going to happen is it's going to go to the House of Representatives, and the House of Representatives has to decide who's the president in this case. So Jefferson was really nervous about this. He was nervous about it going to the House of Representatives because what he thought was going to happen, you know, he kind of viewed it as a mandate that he won because he lost in 1796 to Adams, and now he's defeated him. So he kind of views it as a mandate by the people of the United States that they want him and his policies and Democratic Republican policies to run the White House. And so he's very concerned that like the Federalists are going to play games in the House of Representatives and actually make Aaron Burr the president instead of him. Because remember, the Democratic Republicans have no intention of Aaron Burr actually being the president. And that would really kind of like throw a wrench into all of this stuff. And so if you look at the electoral map, you know, Jefferson wins a lot of the southern and the western states, just like we had talked about. But he also kind of carries New York, which helps him to win the presidency. Now, in the House of Representatives, they don't do what Jefferson is afraid of. The Federalists kind of take the high road here, and they realize that they've lost the election. They realize that the people really wanted to vote for Jefferson as the president and Aaron Burr as the vice president. And so that's who the House of Representatives puts into the presidency. So that's kind of how Thomas Jefferson wins the presidency in his first term. So by the third election in American history, really or was the fourth election in American history, I'm sorry, it becomes very controversial here in the election of 1800. Now, it's significant for a lot of reasons, this election. So if you look at it in the big term, Jefferson actually calls this, one of the nicknames, though, is the Revolution of 1800. So you have to think to yourself, why would they call the election of 1800 like a revolution, or they call it the Revolution of 1800? The real reason behind it is it's the first time that they've changed political parties of the presidency, or basically the group that's ruling, or the political party that's ruling the country. And it's also kind of seen as this revolution because, look, you had Washington for 2 terms. He was a Federalist. Then you had John Adams, who was a Federalist. This is the first time ever we've changed a political party. Now, what's significant about this? Yes, you have new ideas coming into the office, and you have maybe new policies. But what I think is very significant about it is that it's not met with violence, or it's not met with, John Adams trying to hold on to his power, or the Federalists trying to hold on to their power. It's what you would call a bloodless revolution. And a lot of people say, well, America has bloodless revolutions every 4 years, or every 2 years in the House, or every 6 years in the Senate. And so this kind of sets another precedent in American history. So again, like Washington set precedents, this is one that Adams sets. He just steps down. He loses. The Federalists don't try and rally and keep their power and fight Jefferson in a civil war to maintain their power. They just kind of step down, and they allow the Democratic Republicans to take power. And Americans kind of think that this is normal, that this happens all the time, because in our history it did happen all the time. Change hands, new political parties come in, Democrats win, the Republicans win, the Federalists win, and they kind of take office, and it doesn't break out into a civil war. In other countries, in other revolutions, this very well would have broken out into a civil war because people want to cling to their power. So again, I think this is something that's unique about American democracy, especially early on, because now after the precedents are set, then people are going to kind of follow into it. But these early people didn't necessarily have to react the way that they did, and so I do think they react in kind of a special way. So what's important also about the after effect of it is what kind of comes in the wake. Congress kind of realizes, and I think the American people kind of realize, that the Electoral College needs to be changed a little bit. It needs to be amended. They don't want to get rid of the Electoral College. They like the system that they've set up, but they recognize that it's not designed for political parties. And when you have political parties as a part of the system, you're going to end up with people getting tie votes all the time. If you're just voting for a single candidate, that's not going to happen very often. But if you're going to vote for the president and the vice president in each state that they win, you're going to have this problem all the time where you keep having ties in the Electoral College. And so this is the big reason that they're going to kind of separate the voting for the president and the vice president specifically. So nowadays when you go to vote, you vote for basically like the president and his running mate, the vice president. And the vice president really just kind of wins if the president wins. And that's kind of really the system that they set up here. As far as the president and the vice president, the electors are going to vote either specifically for president or for vice president. And so that's kind of how it's set up after the 12th Amendment. And that's a change, that they don't want the same thing to happen, where you have a tie between the president and the vice president. So they're going to make that distinction now within presidential elections, which is a big change. All right, guys, we're going to stop there. So I'll see you guys on Tuesday. Hopefully you enjoy your nice 3-day weekend.